perhaps right before we took that call, I was going to bring up pay-to-play. So you've kind of alluded to pay-to-play and indirectly, at least, your exchange with Joe. And again, that was Joe Schreibvogel, who's sort of kind of the, I guess, kind of one of the key players in pay-to-play, if that's reasonable. So I don't know if you want to briefly just, explain a little bit more about pay-to-play. I mean, you've kind of alluded to, but just what that really means and perhaps why Joe called in or has a beef with you, if you want to address that or not, that's up to you. But
when the Big Cat Coalition got together, what we tried to determine was how big is this problem, and what we found is there are about 33 places that we could find that are publicly advertising that you can come and play with a baby tiger or baby lion. And if you figure the USDA guidelines that are limiting the size cats they can use, even at a very conservative estimate, we figure there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 of these exotic cats that are being bred for that purpose alone every year. Of those 200 cats, probably a quarter of them are coming from Joe Schreibvogel. At the time that he first came up on my radar, which was like 2009, 2000, or 2010, he was doing 50 gigs at malls across the Midwest. So he'd set up on Wednesday, go through Sunday. He'd have to have the cubs there that were the right age to be used for that purpose, and people would be lined up around the mall, coming in, handling cats for just a few minutes, and then it's passed on to the next person and the next person and the next person. And so these animals live a horrible life of just constantly being manhandled and dropped. When the cubs don't want to be held, they kick and scream, and so what the handlers do to make them stop is they hold them under their arms, they bounce them up and down, they blow in their faces, which is what a mother cat does when she's disciplining her cub. It's like the last thing she does before she knocks them across the room. So the cubs know when they get that in the face, stop whatever they're doing.
Last warning, yeah.
Right. So it's an awful life for these animals, and it's adding to the problem every time they do it. If he claims that he has 200 tigers currently, this is Joe, claims that he has 200 tigers. If he's adding 50 tigers to that every year, probably not even half of them are surviving this horrible handling. But to continue breeding animals to support the animals that you have is just crazy. And that's what we hear from so many of these people. They say, well, we can't support our facility if we don't breed more animals. If you're breeding more animals, if they survive, there are going to be more mouths to feed. And so you can never get ahead of that game. It mystifies me that people think that that could be an excuse for breeding animals. They do it because it's easy money right now.
So, yeah, I guess you and Joe probably aren't exchanging Christmas cards this year or any other year, but and again, it's just obviously a very sharp philosophical gulf, as we heard a little bit of a sample on when Joe was on the phone there. So, and again, I guess you made a reference to this earlier, but I'm sure people, saw the national news kind of when swimming with tiger cubs was a story there for a while, and so I guess that may or may not be hooked into Joe, but that's
they
a
buy
local.
some of their tiger cubs from him, so it is hooked into him.
Okay.
And
So for people who didn't see that story, basically you can go to this place and, if you want to, swim with these tiger cubs, and of course my understanding, which may or may not be accurate, is that they're cubs and they're scared, so they're just trying to get back to the edge. So it seems like you're swimming with cubs, but they're basically panicking and trying to get out of the water, right?
And that's exactly the issue. When people are paying to have their picture made with a cub, that cub is kicking and screaming and wants desperately to get away. So some of these people came up with the bright idea that, oh, we'll just put the person in the pool, and then the cub has to hang on to them, because otherwise the cubs, feels like they're going to drown, and so then they can get their picture and they feel like, oh, this cub loves me. This cub doesn't love you. This cub's hanging on for dear life.
Survival instinct, yeah.
And this place up in Dade City got hammered by the Florida Wildlife Commission for doing this, and then the Florida Wildlife Commission came back and said, well, okay, we're going to let you do it, but you can't keep throwing the cub back in the pool. But USDA and Florida Wildlife Commission don't do undercover investigations, so nobody's ever going to be there to see that she's going to be probably continuing to throw those cubs in there. And for what? For a couple $100 for an animal that then could live 20 years and it costs us $10,000 per tiger per year to take care of them properly. So when you're adding constantly to the number of animals you have to take care of, and they cost so much to take care of them, it's destined to fail.
Yeah. Well, we're sort of even beyond our time, but I may try to take at least one more call. There's emails I haven't gotten to. But let me ask about, just because in sort of announcing your appearance, I got all kinds of emails, Facebook messages, and certainly stirred up all kinds of reactions. So one of the things that happened amongst those is I received kind of a scorching email about you and Big Cat Rescue regarding rabbits. So we only have maybe a minute or less for the whole final part of our chat here, so I don't know if you want to just briefly address that, or...
Sure. For the long story, if people are interested, they can go to bigcatrescue.org and just in the search bar type feeding rabbits, and they'll find a very lengthy explanation that we did of that. We do bobcat rehab and release, where bobcats are sent back to the wild if they were born in the wild. And in order to properly prepare them for living in the wild, they have to know who their food sources are, and we have to make sure that they are capable of killing their food sources. So they have enclosures where they're taught to hunt. We have 2 baby bobcats right now that are learning to hunt together, and we feel horrible about the fact that any animal is killed for food. I'm a vegetarian. My husband really leans toward veganism. We're not going to kill animals to feed ourselves, but these cats are carnivores and they have to eat meat. So anybody who loves rabbits or loves any kind of animal that's farmed for food, they should be like our biggest supporters, because we're trying to stop the industry that is breeding so many of these big cats out there who are eating all of these other animals. If we can do away with the private possession of exotic cats, all those animals are saved. And so it's just a diversionary tactic that are used by Joe Schreibvogel and Kathy Stearns and others like him to try and cause divisiveness among the animal groups. We have a number of friends in other animal rescue groups.
Right. I think who I heard from, I think was more in the rabbit realm. But I think what may have been overlooked in some of this is the Big Cat Rescue. Those cats aren't all permanent residents, that you are rehabilitating and then releasing the ones depending on how they got there. So that's sort of a different form of how they're cared for and fed and trained if they're going to go back out into the wild, as opposed to kind of just being lifelong residents.
Right. We usually only have 1 or 2 rehab bobcats per year.
Yeah.
So you're talking very
So,
small.
and I assume those are the only ones where this rabbit situation happens.
Well, live rabbits, yes.
Right. Okay.
Our other population gets all kinds of food, but it's always arrives frozen.
All right. Well, geez, Carole, I wish we had more time. There's other things. There was callers and emailers, but we managed to chew up even more time than I had allotted for this, and I allotted extra time. But we've been speaking with Carole Baskin. We'll have you back on, of course, and hopefully much sooner than 6 years next time. From Big Cat Rescue, the website, huge, sprawling, deep, comprehensive website is bigcatrescue.org, and they're also on Facebook at Big Cat Rescue. So, Carole, thanks so much for joining us again on Talking Animals, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, take care.